My son's father-in-law laughed. Cleaning toilets is all you could do. Obey me or get out. He didn't know what I can do. I knew the moment Franklin raised his glass that he intended to humiliate me. He always picked his moments carefully, choosing the exact second when everyone was looking but no one would dare interrupt him. "Henna," he boomed across the long dining table. "A woman like you should feel lucky anyone lets you stay under this roof. All you ever did in life was scrub toilets." His laughter shook the silverware. "In my house, you obey or you get out." Celia smirked beside him, tapping her fork against her plate, with the impatience of someone forced to breathe the same air as a person she considered beneath her. "He's right," she added. "No one needs a useless old woman clinging to a family she drags down." I glanced at my son, Josh, but he avoided my eyes the way he always did when his wife or father-in-law spoke cruelly. Silence from a child hurts more than any insult. I felt that silence like a hand tightening around my ribs. Franklin noticed and leaned back in his chair with a satisfied grin, as if he had just won another unseen battle. "Look at him," he said loudly. "Even Josh is embarrassed by you." My hands trembled, but I hid them under the tablecloth. I had learned long ago that showing fear only fueled Franklin's appetite for domination. Yet the pain echoed through me, deep and familiar, shaped by years of misunderstanding that had never been mine to correct. If you feel justice deserves celebration, smash that hype button. Let us keep stories like this alive, echoing far, far away. Your support helps us bring understanding and love to those who deserve it. Thank you so much. Keep listening. The truth is that Franklin's hatred did not begin with my age or my presence in his house. It began years ago, long before he ever sat at the head of this table acting like a king. When my husband, Thomas, was still alive, he suffered a mild stroke he tried desperately to hide from me. He feared becoming a burden. He feared making me worry. He feared slowing down the life we had built together. Instead of coming to me, he confided in Franklin, his old classmate. He trusted him. I wish he never had. Franklin twisted the story and carried it straight to Josh. "Your mother neglected your father," he told him. "She let him die because she was too busy worrying about herself." I did not know he had said such a thing until it was too late to repair the damage. Celia used those words like seeds, planting them over and over in Josh's mind until they grew into a forest that blocked out every memory of the mother who had raised him alone for years while holding 2 jobs and caring for his sick father. "Your mother has always been selfish," she told him. "People like her ruin their families and pretend to be victims." Franklin and Celia had sculpted a version of me that suited them, a woman careless, incompetent, and undeserving of respect. And Josh, blinded by grief and manipulation, believed them because it was easier than believing his wife and father-in-law were lying. But Franklin had his own reasons for tearing me down. Long before Thomas died, Franklin had begged him for money to cover a failed investment. Thomas, generous to a fault, helped him, but he kept a record of every transaction. In his earlier will, the one Franklin never expected anyone to see, Thomas wrote one short, chilling line: "Henna knows what you did." That sentence was enough to terrify Franklin. He spent years pretending to despise me for moral reasons, when in truth he feared exposure. He feared losing the reputation he guarded more fiercely than he guarded his own family. And now, with me living under his roof, he feared I might uncover more. That fear fermented into hatred. Hatred became cruelty. Cruelty became the sport he played at every family meal. "This house loses value every minute you're in it," Franklin spat that night, narrowing his eyes at me. "You make the ward name look filthy." He leaned closer, lowering his voice. "Women like you belong in basements with a bucket and bleach. That's the only world you ever earned." Celia laughed softly, not because she found it funny, but because cruelty was her language, and Franklin had spoken it fluently. The rest of the table sat frozen. No one challenged him. No one even shifted in their seats. The shame he threw at me scattered across the room like sparks, but no one dared stomp them out. And Josh, my only child, stared into his plate, his jaw tight, refusing to look my way. I whispered his name, but he swallowed hard and shook his head, silent again. In that moment I understood something painful but undeniable. Whatever version of me they had built inside his mind was stronger than the mother he once knew. Franklin sat back, pleased with the damage he had done, and lifted his drink again. But while he smiled, I felt something shift inside me, not rage, not revenge, but a clarity sharper than any blade he could ever throw. I finally saw the truth. Franklin did not want me obedient. He wanted me erased. And for the first time, I felt the first pulse of something that would one day become my resistance. The humiliation he thought would break me was the spark that made me decide quietly, silently, that I would not remain the woman he thought I was. Not anymore. The morning after that humiliating dinner, Franklin acted as if he owned not only the house, but also every breath I took inside it. He walked into my room without knocking, jangling a ring of keys in his hand. "New rules," he announced, and before I could respond, he reached behind the door, removed my key, and slid it into his pocket. "You do not lock yourself in here. You don't need privacy. People like you only get into trouble when you're left alone." His tone made it clear this was not about safety. It was about ownership. About stripping away the last small thing in the world I still controlled. That same afternoon, when lunch came, Celia placed a plate in front of me, cold leftovers scraped from the bottom of their pans. "Eat," she said. "That's good enough for someone your age." I looked across the table at the steaming meals she and Josh were enjoying, but I did not say anything. She watched me with a satisfied tilt of her chin, as if my silence was the confirmation she craved. "Honestly, Henna," she added, "you should be grateful we let you eat at all. Franklin thinks we're wasting money feeding you." She laughed softly. "Maybe he's right." Later, when I gathered my laundry and moved toward the machine in the garage, Franklin appeared in the doorway, as if summoned by the sound of my footsteps. "No," he barked. "You do not touch the washer. Electricity costs money." He stepped forward, plucked the laundry basket from my arms, and dumped my clothes back onto the concrete floor. "I'll decide when your things get washed. Until then, stop making messes." He walked away, leaving me with my clothes scattered like the remains of some small dignity he had just crushed under his heel. Celia found me moments later and smirked as she stepped over the pile. "Why are you still trying to manage anything, Henna? You're old. You're slow. You're nothing. At your age, people aren't supposed to be living, they're supposed to be fading." She leaned close so her breath touched my cheek. "Honestly, sometimes I wonder why you're still alive. What purpose could you possibly have left?" Her cruelty never needed to be loud. It dripped like acid, steady and effective. Then came the sentence that hit me like a blade slipping between my ribs. "Josh has wanted you out of his life for years," she said. "I'm the one who convinced him to let you stay. You should be thanking me on your knees." My lips parted, but no sound came. I searched her eyes for even a flicker of truth, and what I found was something worse, a confidence that told me she fully believed the story she was selling. And maybe Josh believed it too. That night, I tried to speak to my son. He was in the living room, scrolling through his phone, his face lit by a dull blue glow. "Josh," I whispered as I approached, "can we talk?" He did not look up. "I'm busy, Mom." I sat down anyway. "I never neglected your father. I never." His head snapped up, anger flashing across his features. "I don't want to hear it. Franklin told me everything. Dad trusted him. If you had been there for him, he might still be alive." His voice cracked, not from grief, but from resentment that had been festering for years. My heart folded into itself. I wanted to reach for him, to hold him like I did when he was a boy with scraped knees and big dreams. But the man sitting before me was no longer reaching back. Celia hovered behind the doorway, listening, her arms crossed like a guard, ensuring the conversation stayed within the lines she had drawn. Franklin's grip on Josh ran deeper than I had realized. He had bought Josh a sleek new car last year, paid off his college loan, invested in a business idea Josh had been too afraid to pursue alone. Each gesture came with a leash, one Josh didn't recognize as a leash at all. "He's been more of a father to me than anyone," Josh muttered once, months earlier. I didn't understand then. I do now. Franklin had woven himself into my son's life not out of love but control. and I was the obstacle that made that control imperfect. Days passed under a tightening web of restrictions. I was told when to eat, where to sit, what rooms I was allowed to enter. My phone charger disappeared. My mail arrived already opened. The house, once a place I hoped would give me a second chance after Thomas's death, became a cage, curated by people who despised me. One afternoon, Franklin stood in the hallway watching me struggle with a basket of towels I wasn't even allowed to wash. "You know," he said, smirking, "you really bring the Ward family down. We're respected people. Having someone like you live here, it's embarrassing." He stepped closer. "You're lucky I allow it. Women like you don't get respect. They earn filth and expect sympathy." He shook his head. "Not in my house." Celia chimed from the kitchen. "Honestly, we're doing you a favor by letting you breathe our air." I felt something inside me shift. Small but unmistakable, a subtle fracture in the place where fear had been living unchecked. The more they tried to shrink me, the more I felt the faint, steady pulse of something they had not yet managed to extinguish. A resolve neither of them saw coming. I should have known Franklin would choose a public stage for his next humiliation. The Ward Anniversary Gala was held at a downtown hotel filled with polished marble, expensive suits, and people who pretended kindness only when cameras flashed. I stood near the back, hoping to disappear into the wallpaper. But Franklin had other plans. He spotted me the way a hawk spots a mouse. With a grin that stretched too wide, he marched toward me and grabbed my wrist hard enough to make my fingers tingle. "Come on, Hannah," he said loud enough for half the room to hear. "Don't hide. You're part of the family, aren't you?" Before I could answer, he yanked me into the center of the ballroom. Conversations halted. Glasses paused midair. And then, with a flourish he must have practiced in the mirror, Franklin raised his champagne and announced, "Ladies and gentlemen, meet my son-in-law's mother, our very own toilet scrubbing specialist." Laughter burst around me like fireworks, sharp, hot, impossible to ignore. I felt my knees weaken. My throat closed. Someone whispered, "Oh my God," followed by another voice, "Does she really?" Wow! Every eye became a needle. I searched instinctively for Josh. He stood a few feet away, frozen, cheeks burning pink. He looked at me and then at Franklin, as if weighing which one of us he feared disappointing more. His mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. Then Franklin's stare landed on him cold, commanding, and Josh lowered his gaze. That was the moment the knife twisted in my chest. Before I could steady myself, Celia approached with a sugary smile and a full glass of sparkling water. "Oops," she said, slipping her wrist just enough for the liquid to splash across my skirt. The cold shock hit first, then her giggle. "Don't worry, Hannah. You're used to being wet and dirty, aren't you?" More laughter. My face burned so hot I felt faint. The room tilted. Celia took a step back, admiring her work like an artist pleased with her brushstrokes. Then, Franklin leaned in front of everyone and tapped my cheek with his fingers light, but just enough to sting. "Know your place," he whispered. "People like you don't get to stand tall in a room like this." A hush fell. Even the cruel ones knew a line had been crossed. My breath shook as I stepped back, shaking, feeling the walls close in around me. They had shamed me privately for months. But this public display of domination, it pierced deeper than any insult whispered at home. I turned away before the tears could fall and walked out of the ballroom, gripping the railings as if the building might swallow me whole. Outside, the cool night air hit my face like a blessing. I leaned against the brick wall, trying to catch the breath they had stolen from me. I must have stood there for only seconds when a voice beside me said, "Mrs. Hannah Ward?" I flinched and turned. A tall man in a dark suit stood under the glow of a street lamp, holding a leather briefcase. His hair was salt and pepper, neatly combed, and his eyes, sharp but kind, studied me with a familiarity I did not understand. "I'm sorry to startle you," he said, offering a respectful distance. "My name is Alden Price." The name meant nothing to me, but he spoke it as if it should. "I recognized you from an old photograph," he continued. "You were standing beside your husband, Thomas, on the day he signed the co-ownership agreement." My heart stopped. "Agreement?" I echoed. "Yes." He opened his briefcase and pulled out a folder wrapped in protective plastic. Thomas Ward and my firm handled the transfer of ownership for the Redwood Bluff parcel. Your signature is on the file. Franklin was the one who handled all estate documents after Thomas passed, which made it easy for him to hide anything he did not want me to see. You are listed as co-owner. He paused, watching my reaction. Which means Franklin Hart has no legal right to use it as collateral for his current business loans. The words hit me like a sudden gust of wind. I blinked hard, trying to understand. Alden continued gently, Mrs. Ward, that land is worth a substantial amount, 7 figures, depending on market conditions. Banks approved his loans under the assumption that he controlled the property. He closed the folder, but he doesn't, not without your consent. A slow realization unfolded inside me, trembling like a newborn flame. Franklin? Used my husband's land? Alden nodded. Yes, and illegally, at that. If you withhold consent, or worse, if you choose to revoke his authorization, his loans become immediately vulnerable. His company could face foreclosure. I brought a hand to my mouth. I had no idea, I whispered. I suspected as much, Alden said softly. Thomas trusted you. That's why he added your name, not Franklin's. He must have known what kind of man Franklin really was. Something inside me cracked, not from pain this time, but from awakening. A warmth spread through my ribs, something fierce, something upright, something I thought I had lost. Alden's voice dipped lower. Mrs. Ward, if these people are mistreating you, this may be your way out, your way to reclaim what's yours. Reclaim. Such a small word, such an enormous possibility. Franklin had dragged me into a room full of strangers just to humiliate me. Celia had drenched my dress and laughed. Josh had stood silently while his mother was torn apart. But now, I held the one thing they did not know I had. Power. I'll help you, Alden added, if you want to take back control. The street lamp flickered overhead. My pulse steadied. My spine straightened. For months they had pushed me down. Now it was my turn to rise. Mr. Price, I said, lifting my chin. Tell me everything. I followed Alden into his office 2 days later, my hands cold, despite the heater humming softly in the corner. Something inside me had shifted since the gala, not enough to call strength, but enough to keep my spine straight as we sat across from each other at a long wooden table. He placed a sealed envelope in front of me, aged at the corners, the handwriting unmistakably familiar. Henna, he said quietly, this is your husband's final will, the real one. My breath hitched. Final? Franklin told Josh there was only the old version. Alden shook his head and slid the envelope toward me. Franklin intercepted the updated document the week Thomas passed. He told the probate office that your husband died before signing anything new. But this, he tapped the seal, is notarized, fully valid. My hands trembled as I opened it. Thomas's handwriting appeared, steady but softened by illness. The words blurred for a moment before clearing. To my wife, Henna Ward, I leave full ownership of our home, our land, and all assets held jointly or in trust. She has stood by me through everything. She alone knows the truth of my life. I felt something warm rise in my chest, relief, sorrow, vindication, all bound into one aching breath. But then my eyes caught a handwritten note at the bottom. Not formal, not part of the legal language. Just his final plea. Henna, if anything happens to me, be wary of Franklin Hart. He owes our family more than he ever repaid. I fear he may use my illness for his gain. My fingers gripped the paper as if it might disappear. The room felt smaller. He knew, I whispered. Thomas knew all along. Alden nodded. Your husband suspected that Franklin was using him. He told me once that Franklin had borrowed a large sum after a failed investment money Thomas never told you about because he didn't want to burden you. Franklin promised to repay him in time, but instead of gratitude, he fed resentment, especially to Josh. I closed my eyes, pain spreading through me like ink. Josh truly believes I abandoned his father. He believes what Franklin repeated to him for years, Alden said gently. And what Celia reinforced. Lies become truth in a house where no one defends the accused. I thought of my son's face, At the gala, humiliated, confused, obedient. I had lost him long before I realized I was losing my home. Alden opened another file and handed me a stack of letters, faded, typed, signed with Thomas's careful signature. "Your husband wanted you to have these," he said. "They were written during his treatment. He asked the clinic to hold them, but after his death, Franklin collected the mail before anyone else." My throat tightened as I unfolded the first letter. "My love, I am keeping the severity of my illness from you. You work too hard already, and I cannot bear to add fear to your days. I know you would drop everything to care for me, and that is precisely why I must lie a little longer." Another letter. "Franklin checks on me sometimes. He means well, but I do not trust the way he asks questions about our finances. Please do not blame yourself if things unravel later. You have never failed me." And the last, "If I do not make it home, remember this. You were the only one who ever stood by me. Protect yourself. Some men wear kindness like a borrowed coat. They return it when it no longer suits them." Tears blurred the ink. I pressed the pages to my chest, aching for the voice I would never hear again. Alden waited quietly until I looked up. "Henna, everything you've been blamed for, every accusation has been built on manipulated truths. You did not abandon your husband. He tried to protect you. Franklin twisted that sacrifice into guilt." I wiped my eyes, anger settling into a firm, steady pulse. "And Josh believed them. He believed what a vulnerable boy was taught to believe," Alden said. "But lies crumble when confronted by documentation." I stared at the will, the letters, the truth laid bare on the table. For months I had been made to feel useless, small, unwanted. Yet Thomas, my Thomas, had trusted me with everything he valued. Franklin had stolen not just property, but my dignity, my family, and my peace. "What now?" I asked, voice low but calm. Alden leaned forward. "Now," he said, "we act. You hold the deed. You hold the will. You hold documented proof that Thomas intended for you alone to inherit everything. And Franklin has used your property illegally. That gives you leverage, legal and moral." I swallowed hard. "Will this destroy the company?" "If you choose to expose his fraud," Alden answered, "yes, it would collapse overnight. Banks do not tolerate forged collateral." I let the silence stretch, imagining Franklin's smug face twisting when the truth finally struck him, imagining Celia scrambling to protect the status she worshipped, imagining Josh realizing the lies he had believed for decades. "Henna," Alden said softly, "you've spent years surviving their cruelty. It is time to decide whether you want justice or mercy." I folded the letters carefully, feeling Thomas's love wrap around me like a shield. Justice. For him. For myself. For the years stolen. I lifted my head. "Alden, help me take back everything they tried to bury." His expression sharpened with resolve. "Then, Henna, prepare yourself. You are holding an ace they never saw coming." I had spent most of my life keeping the peace, swallowing words that clawed their way up my throat, but the moment Alden filed the petition to validate Thomas's true will, something inside me steadied for the first time in years. The legal summons went out within 48 hours. Franklin received his copy at breakfast. I was in the kitchen wiping the counter when I heard his bark echo through the house like a storm warning. "What the hell is this?" His chair scraped back. Paper tore. His voice cracked with something I had never heard from him before: fear. Celia rushed in. "Franklin, what happened?" "This old woman," he snarled, waving the summons in the air, "is claiming ownership of the Ward estate and all assets tied to it." He jabbed a finger in my direction. "She thinks she can take everything from me." I didn't look away. "I'm not taking anything that wasn't already mine." His face reddened. "You? Owning property? You've never owned anything but a mop." Then, quieter but venomous, "You should have stayed in your place." But his hands were shaking. He knew exactly what this meant. The facade was cracking, and I watched it with a calm I hadn't felt in years. Later that afternoon, Celia cornered me near the laundry room after Joshua had left for work. Her voice was dripping with sweet poison. "You really think anyone will believe you over us? You're a forgotten old widow. We're the Ward family." I said nothing. Years of being dismissed had taught me the power of silence. So she raised the stakes. 2 hours later, she burst into the living room screaming so loudly even Franklin startled. "She stole my money!" She pointed at me with theatrical fury. This woman, this parasite, took $200 from my purse." Franklin rounded on me instantly. "You've started stealing now?" I felt my heart lurch, but before I could respond, Celia kept going, her lies rehearsed. "I saw her near my bag earlier. I should have known. Trash steals, that's what they do." Franklin nodded, already convinced. "Call Josh. He needs to hear what kind of woman his mother really is." But fate, for once, was on my side. A voice came from the hallway. "Mr. Hart," Alden said calmly as he stepped inside, "I would advise you not to make accusations you cannot prove." Celia froze. "This is none of your business." Alden tilted his head slightly. "Actually, it is. The moment you accused my client of theft, you triggered a legal concern. Good thing this property is equipped with indoor security." Franklin blinked. "Security? What security?" "I installed additional cameras when the estate litigation began," Alden replied, handing him a tablet. "Let's take a look at the footage from the last 30 minutes. Celia's breath faltered. "You can't!" But it was too late. The screen lit up, and there she was, Celia standing alone in the living room, dramatically slipping $200 into her own jacket pocket, then gasping and grabbing her purse as if she had discovered a crime. Alden spoke calmly. "Camera footage clearly shows Mrs. Celia Hart fabricating the theft." The silence that followed was absolute. Franklin's face contorted with humiliation, rage, and something far uglier. Panic. He had counted on lies to hold this household together. Now they were unraveling like cheap thread. "Celia," he whispered harshly, "what have you done?" But Celia wasn't ready to surrender her throne. I was just trying to protect this family. She's dangerous, Franklin. She wants to destroy us." "No," Alden said, voice sharp as a blade. "She wants what is legally hers." Franklin turned away, but I saw it, the cracking veneer, the spiraling loss of control. He was a man who lived off intimidation, and now the foundation beneath him had begun to rot. But the true collapse came the next morning. A banker in a crisp gray suit arrived unannounced. Franklin tried to greet him with his usual arrogance, but the man brushed past him, straight to me. "Mrs. Henna Ward?" he asked. "Yes?" He handed me a folder. "We need your authorization to continue using your land as collateral for Mr. Hart's corporate loans. Without it, the bank will have to begin foreclosure proceedings on the Hart business holdings." Franklin's voice cracked like glass. "Foreclosure? Over what?" The banker answered without sympathy. "Over the illegal use of property he does not own. You pledged land that legally belongs to Mrs. Ward. Our team reviewed the petition submitted yesterday. We now understand the collateral was fraudulent." The blood drained from Franklin's face. "Fraud? I didn't. She's lying." Alden stepped forward. "The notarized will proves ownership. The deed traces back to Thomas Ward and his explicit transfer to his wife. You filed a property pledge under false representation. That is bank fraud, a federal offense." Franklin's hands shook violently. "You cannot do this to me." I finally spoke, my voice quiet but steady. "Franklin, you did this to yourself." He staggered back, swallowing air as if the room had shrunk around him. Celia grabbed his arm, but he shook her off, trembling like a man watching his empire slide off a cliff. The banker snapped his briefcase shut. "You have 10 business days to resolve the collateral issue or repay the loan in full. Otherwise, the bank will pursue legal action." Franklin slumped into the nearest chair. 10 days. 10 days before the man who humiliated me, stole from me, manipulated my son, and twisted my husband's dying trust would watch everything he built collapse. For the first time since Thomas died, I felt something warm rise in my chest. Not vengeance, not triumph, justice, and it had only just begun. I should have known Franklin would not accept defeat quietly. Men like him do not crumble when confronted with truth. They thrash, clawing for whatever power they can still reach. So that night, long after the banker left and the house sank into a tense, suffocating silence, he stormed into the living room where I sat folding Mason's forgotten sweater. His face was twisted with a fury that no longer hid behind smugness. "Get up," he barked. "You are leaving this house tonight." I blinked slowly, unsure I heard him correctly. "Tonight?" He stepped closer, his breath sour with rage. "Before sunrise. I will not have you staying one more hour under my roof. You think you can ruin me? Destroy my business? Make me look like a fool? No. I decide who stays here. You are done." His voice grew louder, sharper, the sound of a man whose world was slipping faster than he could grasp. He grabbed my arm, fingers digging into my skin. "Pack your things, or I will put them on the street myself." I felt the old instinct to freeze, to shrink, to make myself small enough to escape his wrath. But something in me had changed. Even so, my voice trembled when I said, "This house is not yours to command." That only enraged him further. "Everything here is mine. You have nothing. You are nothing. A woman who spent her life cleaning toilets should know better than to challenge me." Before I could answer, footsteps thundered down the stairs. Josh appeared, face flushed with anger. My heart leapt with the hope, foolish hope, that he had finally seen who Franklin truly was. But he only pointed at me with shaking hands. "Mom, you need to stop all this. You have caused enough trouble." His voice cracked, but the words were sharp. "I am begging you. Just leave. Dad said you are tearing the family apart. Franklin is right. You should go." My body felt hollow. "Josh," I whispered, "you still believe I ever wanted to hurt you? You still believe their version of me?" He looked away. That hurt more than anything Franklin had ever said or done. Franklin smirked behind him. "See? Even your own son wants you out." Josh flinched at the cruelty in the tone, but he stayed silent. Franklin stepped between us, towering like a judge preparing to pass a sentence. "You leave in the next 10 minutes, or I will drag you out myself. I do not care how old you are. Respect is earned, and you have earned nothing." My throat tightened. I felt the sting of tears, but I refused to let them fall in front of him. He leaned in closer, voice dropping to a cold whisper. "The ward name is clean. You are the dirt stuck to the bottom of it." For a moment I felt myself slipping, the old weakness threatening to return. But then very softly my phone vibrated in my pocket. The shortest sound, a single chirp, but it snapped something inside me back into place. Franklin reached for my suitcase. "Out, now." He yanked it off the ground and slammed it against the doorframe so hard the handle snapped. Josh flinched again. "Franklin, maybe we should let her leave in the morning. It is late." Franklin turned on him with a snarl. "You want her here one more night? Do you know what she is costing us? Do you understand what happens if she keeps talking to lawyers? She is going to bankrupt this family. And you stand there defending her?" Josh's voice shrank to a whisper. "I am not defending her. This feels wrong." "Wrong?" Franklin spat. "What is wrong is that she is still breathing our air. Get out of the way." He shoved him aside. Josh stumbled. He did not look at me. I felt my heart break twice in the same breath. Franklin opened the front door, wind rushing in like a cold slap. "Move. Now." I stood frozen. My legs would not respond. I was not afraid of the darkness outside. I was afraid of leaving without the truth ever reaching my son's ears. But Franklin lunged toward me, grabbing my wrist again. And then, bright lights cut across the house. 3 silhouettes appeared on the porch. A loud knock, firm and authoritative, shook the doorway. "Franklin Hart?" A voice called out. "Police department. We need to speak with you." Franklin froze mid-step. Josh's eyes widened. "Police?" Another knock. "Open the door, now." Franklin's grip loosened. He straightened his jacket, trying to regain dignity, but his voice trembled. "This is ridiculous. I did nothing wrong. I knew exactly what had happened. Alden had sent the evidence. All of it." Franklin opened the door halfway, forcing a smile that was more grimace than charm. "Officers, this must be a misunderstanding." The lead officer held up a folder. "We received multiple documents, including forged signatures on loan applications, unauthorized use of property as collateral, and attempted coercion of Mrs. Henna Ward. We have questions that require your immediate cooperation." Franklin sputtered. "She is lying. That woman is sabotaging me." The officer looked at me, then back at him. "We also have audio recordings submitted by attorney Alden Price. They indicate you threatened her safety and attempted to remove her from the premises illegally. Josh stared at Franklin, horror slowly dawning on him. The officer stepped inside. Mr. Hart, step away from Mrs. Ward. Franklin's voice cracked. I am not letting her ruin my life. The officer raised a hand. Sir, step back. Celia appeared at the staircase, pale as chalk. What is happening? Another officer spoke calmly. We are opening a formal investigation. You are required to come with us for questioning. Josh stepped forward, shaking. Franklin, is this true? Franklin pointed at me with shaking hands. She orchestrated this. She is the reason everything is falling apart. But the officers had heard enough. Mr. Hart, the lead officer said, place your hands where we can see them. Franklin's face twisted into something feral, but he complied. And I, standing there with my half-packed suitcase, felt something I had not felt in years. Not vindictive, not triumphant, safe. For the first time, I was not the one being removed from the home. He was. I never imagined myself sitting in a courtroom at my age, hands folded tightly in my lap, waiting for strangers in crisp suits to decide the fate of the man who had tormented me for years. Yet there I was, watching Franklin across the aisle as he shifted in his chair, sweat collecting at his temples despite the cold air. The judge entered. Everyone rose. My heart thudded in my chest like a drum calling old ghosts to the surface. The prosecutor began by presenting the financial crimes, forged signatures, illegal collateralization of my land, attempts to seize property not belonging to him. Franklin tried to look bored, but the twitch in his jaw betrayed him. Then came the moment that changed everything. Your Honor, the prosecutor said, we will now present evidence left behind by the late Thomas Ward. A hush rippled across the courtroom. I felt my breath hitch. A screen lit up. There he was. Thomas. Older, thinner, but unmistakably him. He sat in a hospital bed, tubes taped to his arms, but his eyes, gentle and clear, looked straight into the camera. If you're watching this, he began softly, it means I could not protect my wife, myself. My throat closed. I have learned things I can no longer keep quiet. Franklin Hart is not the friend I believed him to be. Across the aisle, Franklin jolted upright. Thomas continued, voice steady, despite his weakened body. Years ago, he borrowed money from me to cover a failed investment. I helped him because I trusted him. But when he lost it all, he blamed Henna to avoid admitting his mistakes. He feared she would reveal the truth. That fear turned into hatred. A murmur rose. A gavel struck. Thomas's voice filled the room again. If anything happens to me or to my wife, please investigate Franklin Hart first. He has more to gain from my silence than anyone. The video ended. I felt my heart shattering and mending all at once. Celia gasped. Franklin leapt to his feet. That video is fake. She staged it. She manipulated him. Sit down, Mr. Hart, the judge commanded. But he kept shouting, voice cracking under the weight of exposure. She is the liar. She poisoned him against me. The prosecutor lifted another document. Your Honor, this is a signed promissory note written by Mr. Hart himself acknowledging the $78,000 he borrowed from Thomas Ward. His handwriting, his signature, his date. We verified it with multiple forensic analysts. Franklin's eyes went wild. She planted that. She planned this entire thing to steal from me. The judge slammed the gavel. Enough. Franklin finally fell silent. Then the prosecutor continued. Your Honor, this establishes motive, opportunity, and a multi-year pattern of financial abuse and coercion against Mrs. Henna Ward. Combined with the evidence provided by attorney Alden Price, the case is overwhelming. Celia, pale as paper, raised her hand hesitantly. Your Honor, I did not know anything. I was misled. The prosecutor turned sharply. We will now present the footage of Mrs. Celia Hart staging a theft and accusing Mrs. Ward of stealing money. Celia's face crumpled as the screen played the recording, her slipping the cash into her own purse, then pretending to find it missing moments later. Franklin glared at her with pure venom. She shrank in her seat. Then came the judge's somber voice. Mr. Hart, Mrs. Hart, do either of you have anything to say before sentencing? Franklin stood. His voice was no longer loud, just pathetic. She ruined everything. She made my life miserable. She deserved to be put in her place. The judge's expression hardened. Sir, your inability to take responsibility is astonishing. Celia tried to speak next, but her voice dissolved into sobs. I just did what he told me. I did not think it would go this far. I did not want prison. The judge looked unimpressed. He lifted the sentencing documents. Franklin Hart, he read. You are found guilty of financial fraud, unlawful use of property, coercion, and elder abuse. You are hereby sentenced to 15 years in state prison. Franklin shouted, No, no, she cannot win. She is nothing. The gavel struck. Remove him. 2 officers dragged him out screaming. The room felt brighter. Celia Hart, the judge continued, for your participation in coercion, defamation, and psychological abuse, you are sentenced to 5 years incarceration. Celia covered her face, wailing as officers escorted her away. Then the judge turned to Josh. You, Mr. Joshua Ward, are not charged with a crime. However, given your susceptibility to manipulation and your recorded involvement in coercive family dynamics, the court orders mandatory family therapy and removes your legal authority over Mrs. Henna Ward's financial affairs. Josh's shoulders collapsed as if the truth finally settled on him like a weight he had been refusing to feel. And then, the judge turned to me. Mrs. Ward, he said gently, your husband's property, assets, and land are rightfully yours. Effective immediately, all ownership is restored to you. For the first time in a very long time, I felt a joy so fierce it nearly broke me open. Everything they stole, everything they used against me, everything they tried to bury, returned. Justice had not just spoken, it had shouted. When the courtroom finally emptied and the echoes of the gavel faded, I remained seated for a long moment, letting the truth settle into my bones. For years I had lived under someone else's shadow, someone else's story about who I was, what I deserved, and how small my life should remain. But now, for the first time in what felt like a lifetime, the world felt wide again. I rose slowly, leaning on the rail, feeling my age, but also something I had not felt in decades' strength. Josh approached me hesitantly, each step uneven, as if he feared the floor might reject him. His face was pale, his eyes swollen, and his hands shook the way they used to when he was a child, apologizing for something he did not mean to do. But this time, the weight behind his trembling was much heavier. Mom, he whispered, then swallowed hard before lowering himself to his knees right there in the hallway. I am so sorry. I stared at him, unsure whether to reach for him or let him speak. He bowed his head, shoulders shaking. I was blind, he said. I let that man tell me who you were. I let him twist every memory I had of you. I believed lies because it was easier than facing how much I didn't understand about Dad's death or how guilty I felt for not being able to help him. His breath hitched. I hurt you because hurting you felt like punishing someone for my own failures. A part of me, the mother part, wanted to gather him in my arms and tell him everything was forgiven. But another part, the woman who had endured humiliation, starvation, and fear, needed this ache to be acknowledged. I placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. Josh, I said quietly, I never needed perfection from you. I only ever needed you to look at me and see the mother who raised you, not the monster someone else told you I was. He lifted his head, tears streaming down his face. Can you ever forgive me? I want to make things right. I want to be your son again. It hurt, but I nodded. You never stopped being my son. You just forgot. His sob cracked the air. And when he wrapped his arms around me, it wasn't the desperate grip of a boy seeking absolution. It was the fragile embrace of a man beginning again. Not long after, I moved back into my own house, my name on the deed, my future finally unchained. The front steps creaked under my weight. The door hinges groaned, and the old porch light flickered like a tired eye trying to stay awake. But to me, it felt like the safest place in the world. Alden Price arrived 2 days later, toolbox in one hand and legal folders under the other arm. He gave me a polite nod as he stepped onto my porch. Thought I'd help you get settled, he said, rolling up his sleeves. This place deserves to feel like home again. Together, we replaced the rotting railing, tightened the window frames, and sorted through decades of paperwork, much of which Franklin had tried to bury, both literally and legally. Alden explained each document with calm precision, ensuring I understood every protection now in place. Restored property rights, frozen accounts tied to fraud, injunctions preventing anyone from approaching without authorization. "You're secure now," he said finally, resting his hand lightly on the table. "No one will ever be able to take your home or your story from you again." I looked around the room. The air felt different now, lighter, mine again. In the evenings, Josh visited, always with groceries or flowers or an apology he hadn't yet put into words. He repaired fences, scrubbed the old brick walkway, and fixed the garden light that had never worked properly. But more importantly, he listened, truly listened, to the things he had spent years refusing to hear. One night, as the sun dipped low and painted the walls with gold, he sat across from me and said, "Mom, you didn't just survive them. You beat them." His voice carried something new, pride. For the first time, I believed him. Later, when the house was quiet and the world outside softened into dusk, I walked to the small wooden drawer where I kept Thomas's watch, the last gift he ever gave me. I held it in my hands, feeling its familiar weight, and whispered, "They tried to erase me, love, but I'm still here." I lit a candle beside his picture and stood straighter than I had in years. People once told me I was nothing more than a woman who scrubbed toilets, that I should obey or disappear, that my life was worth less than the floor I cleaned. But now I knew the truth. I survived humiliation. I survived fear. I survived the people who tried to break me. And I rebuilt my life piece by piece, not because someone allowed me to, but because I refused to stay on my knees. I turned toward the open window where the evening breeze drifted in, and with a steady voice, I said the final words that had been waiting inside me all along. They once said all I could do was clean toilets. But the truth is, they never knew I could stand back up, and I did. I am standing still. My dears, if you stayed with me through every bruise, every betrayal, and every step toward justice, then thank you. Stories like mine are not just memories. They are warnings, lessons, and little lanterns we pass to one another so no one has to walk in the dark alone. I tell these stories because somewhere out there, another grandmother is being silenced, another woman is being underestimated, and another heart is breaking quietly behind a closed door. And maybe, just maybe, hearing mine will help her find her voice. If this story moved you, if you believe that truth deserves a place to stand tall, then please subscribe to Grandemma True Stories. Your support keeps these stories alive, keeps them traveling across the world, and reminds every forgotten woman that someone is listening. Until the next story, my loves, Grandma is holding your hand from here.